I thought I'll take a few moments to talk a little bit about API. So first of all, what is API and why do you need to care about it? Well, just think of API as a tool of communication between your n8n to external tools or services such as Telegram, Tably, or Firecrawl, whatever you have, even Gmail, right? So API or application programming interface, you can think of it as just a means of communication to these tools. And while you don't need to know how to code to be able to use API, n8n specifically, leverages the no-code environment, which allows you to tap into the Power API without touching any code at all. You do need to understand the underlying concept of an API, right? So an easy way to think of an API is an analogy of a client-server relationship, right? So for example, you're at a restaurant, you're the client in this case, or rather your n8n workflow goes to a restaurant and you want to get dinner, you want to get food, you want to get beverages, and the way you communicate it is through the waiter, which in this case is the API, right? And the order or the request basically goes to the back kitchen, which in this case is the external app or services, right? So this could be, again, the Telegram or Google Drive or Gmail or whatever, or Telegram, Firecrawl, Tably, and basically the request that you sent across to the waiter is the API request, right? And we'll get into how this looks like and stuff like that, but basically the architecture is that the API sends that particular request to the kitchen, it gets back an output, and basically what you get on the n8n side is the result. So you can think of it in a simple format like this, right? And within the request API, we can imagine it like an order card, right? The same way the waiter will write down your order. There are a few components that goes into that, right? And the first one is the header of the API. Now, in the header contains the relevant information as to the order sheet. So things like, who's the sender, what kind of format is this request sent on? Is it JSON? Is it some other type of format? And most commonly, the authentication as well, which is the API keys. Now, what is the authentication, right? So basically, this is a key that tells the server, or the API in this case, that you are a valid client of theirs. So imagine you're going into a private event, into a VIP private event, and you need a specific pass to get into that event. So API's access token or authentication is basically the key for you to get into that event, and the key for the API order server to send the request over to the kitchen, right? So what does a typical header look like in JSON format? You typically see something like this. You don't really need to get into the weeds of how the formatting and how to code and stuff like that, but good for you to understand what it typically looks like. It typically involves the format of the API as well as the API keys for authentication. Now, as for the body, so this typically contains the request of the API, which is the meat of the thing. And in this case, as an example, is for us to search this particular URL, which is quiverquant.com, to extract information on stock trades, right? So this API goes to Firecrawl, which basically what it does is a service to extract information on particular stock trades, right? So this is what we're putting into the request of the body, right? And it will look something like this, sending it to the right URLs and prompting with blah, blah, blah. So basically, yeah, just to you understand. But the most important thing is with n8n, you don't need to code to work with APIs. So, but again, it's important for you to understand the core concept of it. So I hope that explains a little bit better the concept of API, gives you a clear understanding on that. But as always, if you have any further questions or some things that you'd like to clarify, please let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you're seeing, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.